I declare open this hearing of the Public Accounts and Estimates Committee. I ask that mobile telephones please be turned to silent. I begin by acknowledging the traditional Aboriginal owners of the land on which we are meeting, the lands of the Wurundjeri people. We pay our respects to them, their elders past, present and emerging, as well as elders from other communities who may be here with us today. On behalf of the Parliament, the committee is conducting this inquiry into the 2025-26 budget estimates. The committee's aim is to scrutinise public administration and finance to improve outcomes for the Victorian community.
Currently, it's not possible to change your name on your marriage certificate. This is having an impact on trans and gender diverse people in Victoria who may have changed their names since their marriage and would like to be able to update this important document in the same way that they can update their birth certificates. This is an update that would make a meaningful difference to many people. Are you aware, Minister, of this issue, and what steps are you taking to fix it?
Thank you. Yes, I am aware of this issue, and thank you for raising it here. The Registry of Birth, Deaths and Marriages has recorded significant life events since, I think, 1850s, and will continue to deliver that services. We know that that this is an issue that has been raised by members of the community, in particular around the name on marriage certificates. I understand the concerns that have been raised by members of the trans community regarding the inability to update names and gender markers on state-issued marriage certificates, even after changes have been made on other government documents. This limitation is imposed somewhat by the Commonwealth Marriage Act, which mandates the marriage certificates must reflect the details at the time of marriage. But we are looking at what options we can enforce to make this, I guess, streamlined and better at the point of contact for those that are making applications in regards to this.
Minister, can I ask, of the programs which fall under your portfolio, what programs are specifically targeted to women in multicultural communities? And can you tell me what the total funding allocation to these programs is as budget output?
I do have budget outcomes, but not broken down into multicultural, but that's something we could provide because there is the Women of Colour program. There is a number of programs that we do provide.
Yeah.
I probably don't have them neatly into an order.
Can I then ask what, Minister, is the total funding allocation to all of your programs under this portfolio?
15.9 million this year.
And then of those programs, in your assessment, Minister, which do you think are going to have the most significant engagement with women in multicultural communities?
I think probably the number one will be the continuation of the rollout of free pads and tampons, and making sure that the application and the way that we've done it, as I said, cuts through language barriers. Which I have, seen women who can't read or speak English be able to use these machines just because of the simple design that we've utilised. I think that is definitely a game changer. I think the ongoing work we're doing with the Safer Workplaces, particularly with the resourcing of Trades Halls program and the Legal Women's Centres, is going to make a real difference to women being able to report workplace harassment and potentially see change there. And hopefully the gender pay gap is something that we see big changes in, which we are across the public service, but we want to see that in the private sector.
Minister, can you explain why the government chose not to allocate the 3.9 million in operational funding requested by Safe Steps to those 28 crisis units that are sitting empty?
Thank the member for the question, and again acknowledge the great work that is being undertaken by Safe Steps in helping us direct so many victims into support services and refuges, hotels, emergency accommodation where it's needed. But in particular, I note that the extension to the sanctuary was funded by the federal government, and certainly there may be a role for the federal government in the ongoing responsibility of how those beds are funded into the future, but certainly our government is focused on the priorities that we've already identified, and that is ramping up our current refuges and our plans around reaching that 35 as a total in the state as a priority with our funding.
Can I ask what steps you're taking to ensure that those purpose-built, currently empty units are opened?
Oh, well, certainly I've had conversations with my counterparts in Canberra around this, but certainly we'll continue to work with Safe Steps about what options come out of national funding that we receive here as a state into the future. We want to see these beds open, there's no doubt about that. It'll be support for the whole system to see this happen, but we need to make sure that it happens safely with ongoing commitments into the future.
There was a figure given earlier of how many people are staying in motels as crisis accommodation earlier. Minister, can I ask, are you aware of comments made by Safe Steps Chief Executive Chelsea Tobin that 93% of critical incidents involving multiple emergency services, including suicide, self-harm and child abduction, happen in motels? Are you aware of those comments?
Look, I can't recall her saying that, but I have no doubt that she probably has said that. And I think there's always risks when, there's also victims that don't want to go to refuges as well. And we have to respect what victims want and what suits them. And really our focus is how do we provide as many options, many safe options as we can to those that need it. So I think, having the balance right of growing our refuge system combined with a better arrangement so that we've got line of sight of what hotels we have where and where we've got people placed and how safe they are is a really important balance to the system.
A key reform recommendation from the Yuruk for Justice Report 1D was to begin and diligently progress the establishment of a dedicated child protection system for First Peoples children and young people. We understand the government was consulting with groups like Victorian and Aboriginal Legal Service, JIRA and others about this reform, including around issues of permanent removals of children. Can I ask, Minister, are those discussions ongoing and where is this recommendation up to?
Yes, work is continuing to be done in regards to that first round of justice recommendations that Yuruk have handed down, and that will continue to happen concurrently with the second lot of recommendations that we anticipate will be coming forward in the coming weeks. I guess the initial response that we had to the recommendations that were passed down in the justice space really looked at categorising those recommendations into accepted to be implemented. I think there were a number that were indicated that they couldn't be, but certainly working in the justice space is something that I'll continue to do, and I'm working closely with the Attorney General around those.
Should Victorians expect to see a statewide treaty by the end of the 25-26 financial year?
I would like to say yes.
Great, thanks. Can I ask, in the department's assessment, which segments of Victoria's youth population are at most risk of disengagement?
Thanks, Mr. Puglielli. I think that there's a range of data points that the department uses to inform considerations about how we target funding within the youth portfolio. I think this year's state budget investment that the Minister's briefly spoken to emphasises what some of those key cohorts are. So the Investing Early in Young Victorians package particularly targets our investments in a number of multicultural communities, including our African Australian communities as well as our Afghan communities. and the Pacifica community as well. And there's significant data that demonstrates that outcomes for some of young people in those communities around educational achievement and completion, for example, as well as mental ill health, is worse than their general peers. And so this year's state budget investment targets those programs, and those programs have demonstrated success. In addition, Mr Puglielli, I'd also draw your attention to the Living Learning program, which the Minister spoke about in her presentation. That targets young people who are significantly disengaged from school. Most of the young people in that program are actually not attending any mainstream school setting, and have to need significant support to re-engage. So those young people have a mental health diagnosis, but in addition to that, a number of those young people come from homes where there has been a history of family violence as well as potentially other experiences of, for example, sexual abuse and other matters to that effect. So those are some of the key cohorts that have been identified and are the focus of this year's budget investment through the youth portfolio.
Thank you. Can I ask as a follow-up, how does the department measure success in engaging these cohorts?
So there's probably 3 layers of how we measure the success of these programs, and I'll speak specifically to the programs that were funded through this year's state budget. The Living Learning package and the Investing Early in Young Victorians package are funded under the government's Early Intervention Investment Framework, or EIF. So under EIF, we are required to provide data to the Department of Treasury and Finance, which measures the achievement of outcomes, i.e. the outcomes that are achieved for young people through the program. So that, for example, with Living Learning, includes measurements such as average attendance at school, and we see significant increase in attendance, but also includes outcomes measures such as average number of emergency department presentations per year. So there's a set number of outcome measures that we're required to report against for all the programs funded under EIF.
RSL Victoria have reported numerous instances of veterans being denied healthcare by providers who refuse to accept their DVA veterans healthcare cards. Is the department aware of this issue?
Thank you very much for that question. And can I say that we continue to consult and work through some of those issues, and in particular with some of the issues in relation to DVA. There's no doubt that this is not something that's just appeared today. This is an ongoing issue, and this is something that the Royal Commission, of course, also incorporated in their deliberations. And we will work with the Commonwealth and other states in relation to DVA matters, but also any other issues that matter to our veterans and their families in Victoria.
Thank you. Can I ask, what's the total budget allocated to the veterans portfolio?
Thank you very much for that question, and I'm very proud that this budget includes $20.2 million for the 25-26 budget. This is approximately 40% higher than the 24-25 target, and this really does reflect our strong commitment to delivering and supporting our veterans in Victoria, and of course supporting our Shrine of Remembrance. And as I've just indicated, some of our employment pathway opportunities through the public sector. That's another a program that will extend for the further 2 years. So overall, we see a $20.2 million in the 25-26 budget, a 40% increase from last year.
Thank you. Can I ask, are there any specific initiatives that would ensure veterans are protected from financial exploitation in RSL environments?
Just to note that we're very proud in Victoria to support our veteran community and most importantly, work with our stakeholders.
Good afternoon. In last year's budget estimates hearings, we were informed by, I believe it was you, Ms Trevgov, that the findings of the sick pay guarantee pilot would be made available in early 2025. Can I ask, has that occurred? Is that publicly available? It's
important to note the sick pay guarantee pilot program was a response to the global pandemic. And this was an initiative that governments had to, of course, very unique circumstances, had to step in and provide support, or as I call it, a blanket, over our most vulnerable, insecure and casual workforce. This is a response, as I said, to protect not only our our most vulnerable workers, but also the broader community and economy from a very contagious and dangerous virus, and it had real and serious harm. So our government had to act, and of course we provided the sick pay guarantee pilot program. I can say the program came to a formal conclusion on the 30th of June 2024, and this was done appropriately. We have been focused on ensuring that the scheme was wrapped up in a, in an orderly process, and of course, as I said, the sick pay guarantee pilot program was something that governments instigated through the global pandemic, and we have commissioned an evaluation, and it is standard practice for governments. We will, of course, consider the usual way by government, and continue to work with colleagues and, of course, stakeholders in relation to the evaluation's findings. But let me, for the committee's information again, repeat that the sick pay guarantee pilot program was an initiative that responded to a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic that provided the most vulnerable short-term security blankets, as I said, most vulnerable insecure workers, casual workers, the opportunity to be able to get that financial security when they were unwell.
I declare this hearing adjourned.